Welcome to the 27th edition of the Decolonial Learning Session from RLS, a pan-decolonial network and grassroots organization in Amsterdam. My name is Pravini Baburam, and I am the moderator of this session. Before I hand it over to Anima, our guest speaker, but for those of you who are not familiar yet with the Decolonial Learning Sessions, these are monthly sessions, sometimes in English like today, sometimes in Dutch. And if you want to stay up to date, you can follow our newsletter, website, Facebook, and Instagram. The sessions are on a donation basis and therefore accessible to everyone. And we really appreciate, your support to be able to offer our speakers a token of appreciation through donation. Today, we'll talk about decolonial ways of engaging in artistic praxis. And I'm very excited to welcome our speaker and a dear, dear friend of mine, Anima Jagru-Ruijsen. Anima identifies as a social artivist. Through dance and henna, she challenges with other women of color dominant narratives and explores alternative worlds beyond resistance. They create spaces where they can be together, learn through their senses and bodily archives, and talk about their experiences and positionalities in relation to each other and life of Earth. Important elements in her art praxis are collectiveness, intersectional and decolonial approaches, materiality, and her life experiences as a mix of Surinamese Hindustani and Dutch Zeeuwse descent. Anima is one of the driving forces behind art collective Stories of Kathak and CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY. Both collectives walk and, as she says, dance different paths and histories, but have one thing in common: fighting for social justice for women of color in the global north, specifically the Netherlands. How can you navigate, negotiate, and claim your space in dominant white institutions, but also exist and thrive outside them? These are questions Anima is engaged with in her work. Her approach to art is to question the idea that art is an individual expression and something separate from life. But how does this work? And how can you make sure those principles sustain when your white environments demand something else? We'll dive into these questions in this decolonial learning session, and we'll be guided in this conversation by Anima. I'm very happy to have you here, Anima. I'll hand it over to you and to people who are in the session. Know that you can ask questions in the chat or raise your hand, and everything is recorded and can be viewed on our blog. So welcome again, Anima, and the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Pravini, for your amazing introduction, and so happy to be here and to see all you beautiful souls online. Okay, so I prepared a text as well, but it's on my right side on another screen, so I'll be looking a little bit like this, but no, I'm still trying to online connect with you while telling the stories. So let's just start with a statement first, and that is we are going to talk about decolonial ways of engaging in artistic praxis, but there is not a one-size-fits-all model. As decoloniality also teaches us, everything is situated and context related. So a decolonial way in artistic practice depends also on what ethics you decide to apply in that specific situation. Let me give you an example. It's tonight, something that I have learned while creating CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY, because CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY became an art collective of various artists who are curious, wanting to learn more and re-relate to each other through henna and dance. So the learnings that we experienced in CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY were always in togetherness, meaning that if someone invites me or anyone else from the collective to speak about CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY, we at least go with two persons to represent CTRL+ALT. And that is not only to represent a collective, it is also to continue our experiences and learnings from those experiences together that we had already. So it's a continuation every time again and again of a learning process. So for tonight, I would like to do the same with you. And I also discussed it a bit with Pravini, because I also think that Pravini has a lot to share, and she invited me into this space in the primary setup also to facilitate and moderate. And it was more like, okay, that is very nice, but how can we actually learn more together as well if we're already having this space together? So, Pravini, thank you for inviting me and for inviting us to the RLS Decolonial Learning Session. I think it is an amazing platform and that you already have so much interesting archive online as well about these sessions. All the gratitude also goes to the people behind the scenes of these sessions from RLS. And also thank you for being open to the suggestion on restructuring this specific learning session. So let me check. Let's make this learning session also an artistic praxis, because an artistic praxis is also a learning praxis to me, and to learn about yourself, and more importantly, to learn how you can relate to what is happening in your life, which is also shaped by different environments that you are in. And it happens now that we are all together in this decolonial learning session, that I assume that you also want to learn something. So one of the decolonial ways I apply is to always seek how we can learn together. And for tonight, I thought it might be interesting to share experiences and stories together instead of me only talking for 45 minutes about my artistic practices. But I also know that there are some people who are present and who would just like to listen. And of course, that is also a way of learning. So don't feel obliged to share. Just share if you want to share. The reason why I thought that might be an interesting setup is because I also know Pravini, and she is also carrying a lot of experiences and stories with her, which I think are also valuable to listen to. So even though I, of course, appreciate her asking me for this session, it really felt something to do together. So from that idea, I thought, well, let's invite everybody in this session also to join the conversation. And therefore, I propose the following structure for the coming, I don't know how many minutes, let's say an hour. And it's divided in 3 parts. So the first part is with the theme, different kinds of oppression. The second part is preparations and negotiations. And the third part is spirituality in artistic praxis. And also, hi to the people who just joined the conversation. Nice that you're here as well. I hope you got the part that it's going to be interactive. If you want to share or reflect, feel free to do so. Each part, we start with a story from the art collective, Stories of Kathak or CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY. Every story ends with a question or a dilemma, which you all can dive into or reflect upon. For those who are not familiar with the collectives, I will shortly introduce them to you. So I need to share my screen for that as well. Here we are. And oh yeah, this was the, yeah. So this is Stories of Kathak. And with Stories of Kathak, we strive for the emancipation of Kathak in the Dutch cultural sector, create the space to learn about the art form and bring out or reinterpret marginalized stories of women of color through Kathak. By doing so, we try to break with existing stereotypes like Surinamese Hindustani women being calm and silent, or the Surinamese Hindustani community being invisible. No, we are invisibilized in many ways, and one of them is through the arts that we connect with. Kathak, in this case, is an art where dance, music, and poetry come together from the northern part of India. Also the part where most of our ancestors used to live before they were transported like products, forced labor, under the violent system of indentured laborship to Suriname. Because of this, it is my strongest belief that the rhythms, the sounds of the ghungroos, dance bells, and its melodies resonate within our bodies, who carry our ancestral knowledges. Stories of Kathak took place in 2019 and 2023. In total, we organized 7 workshops, 2 talk and dance events, 4 online interviews, 3 lecture performances, which are also the biggest productions that we have. Then CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY. With CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY, we seek to decolonize as much as possible and create alternative worlds without having to relate to modernity or coloniality. And that's here. It is a more radical approach towards conducting art than Stories of Kathak. CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY originated from the idea that I wanted to dance a solo performance. However, being in a COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, creating the short film Umad, which you also can see in the current exposition, A Sense of Brown, and following the online Maria Lugones Decolonial Summer School in 2021, still in the pandemic, I realized that if I want to pursue social change for women of color, I cannot do this through a solo performance about social critiques. It needed to be the critique and even go beyond that. We need to re-relate to each other. So CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY became a collective who expresses themselves through an amalgamation of rituals, henna, dance, music, costume designs, expositions, light design, writings, decor, talks, exercises, workshops, photography, videography, and lecture performances. What a difference from the idea of me alone dancing on the stage, right? So since 2021, we organized 4 henna workshops, 5 dance theater performances, 3 expositions, amongst others, the Ashanti exposition, and When We Grow Up, 6 artistic talks, 2 lecture performances. Furthermore, we also participate in roundtable conversations and contribute with our henna rituals to the initiative 3 Mei Liefdevol Verzoek, which is a commemoration of all the victims of the Dutch colonial past. Our costumes are designed by Kaan Karila, whose work you can also see in A Sense of Brown. And last but not least, very soon, the book Beyond Transnational Adoption will be published. Our contribution is an essay where Sheila de Vries and I explore relations between transnational adoption and indentured laborship through our bodily archives. So those are the 2 collectives. And they carry a lot of knowledges and experiences. And from that, I would like to start with the 3 parts that we're going to have during this learning session. And the first part, maybe we can take around 20 minutes, will be about different oppressions. So what I like to suggest is I will tell a story about it, and it ends with some questions. And then you're also invited to reflect upon those questions or give a reaction, maybe share something from this story that you connected with. So we can extend this learning session also to a more collective process of learning together. All right, so it's November 2022. So I discussed with the students and other dancers, what would we like to tell this year with Stories of Kathak? In 2019, we focused on how to understand Kathak as an art more deeply. This year, we want to build further on those fundamentals. One of the reasons Stories of Kathak exist is because we cannot get a place in regular programs, meaning We are not allowed to perform and experience Kathak the way we want to. We already experienced exclusion from the India Dance Festival by the Corso Theatre, who did not want to facilitate us anymore in performing Kathak with live music. I think our first Stories of Kathak proved that we can do perfectly fine without regular programming of white cultural institutions. But what it meant for me is that I also have to be an organizer, my own production house on top of being an artist. So when I will contact theaters to perform Stories of Kathak 2023, I doubt if they recognize the oppressions that we are facing, but I hope at least we have a place to perform. However, should I actually approach Corso Theatre, which claims to be the place for Indian dance performances in the Netherlands? Under which conditions do we collaborate with white cultural institutions to perform our own arts? Is the question that came to mind. And I can elaborate further on the strategies and the stories that follow up these questions, but maybe someone else would like to give a reflection or maybe reaction on the story that you just heard. Is it maybe familiar to your art practice as well? How do you deal with these kind of situations? And maybe oh yeah, yes.
No, I think maybe also welcoming indeed new participants, and I know many of the participants indeed have, relations with white institutions also as artists. So I also want to emphasize the invitation to share if you want. And perhaps I can offer a first reflection and then see if others want to join. And I think the question that you raise, Anima, is also about, ideas of accessibility to, cultural venues that claim inclusion, but only inclusion from a white perspective. And I think this is a challenge for instance, artists within the Hindustani community, where there's so much diversity alone in the way that we engage, for instance, with dance, and that diversity is not always acknowledged, let alone appreciated, in facilitating those different forms of art. So I think one layer in the challenge is that within our community and the diversity that comes along with also the types of art expressions we offer, it seems to be that white institutions only have limited space for what they considered Indian or Hindustani art, right? So I think this also poses the question for us: to what extent do we want to claim that space, and to what extent are we maybe saying, well, keep your space and we're going to create our own spaces, alternative spaces that are no longer relating to the conditions of those white institutions, but that are based on our own autonomous spaces that we set the conditions for. So I think this is one question that I think about often. Do we have to claim a seat at the table, or do we build our own table in our own house?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also very relatable, especially to the case of the dance forms that are presented in a festival, which is also something separate from a regular programming. So you're already in an environment that is createdly specifically for what the white institution thinks is Indian dance. And well, we call the country India, but it is just like with the Netherlands. I'm from Zeeland. It's such a different culture. So many, even the language is different. Of course, you can understand it a bit, but the they don't speak it so much in that part of the Netherlands. It's more like a h. So that means that there's so many differences already in what we now call a nation state. But the problem with that is that you're gonna make it something universal or something homogenic. So India is India. And India has, classical dance forms. I say classical. Between, I don't know the English word. But
yeah, quotation marks, I think.
quotation marks, yeah. So, and that is just one form of dance from India. And there's so many more kinds of dances, folk dances, just other Bollywood dances, more kind of fusion dances, so many different dances. More than 120 languages are spoken in that country. So the diversity is enormous. And that is a focus on India alone. And it's not the focus on diaspora people from India, which is another world to explore with so many other beautiful ways of expressing through dance or music. And well, of course, with the Surinamese Hindustani diaspora, where I'm also a part of, it's Bahita Ghana, or well, that's a very specific form, and I think it's very illustrative for why that is something that is not programmed in the festival, because it's Indian dance, but so many other kinds of dances are excluded from that. And the moment that happens, then you know that the diversity is not celebrated. It's just a one single story that is happening there, and that is only with the Indian classical dances. And on top of that, we were actually performing Indian classical dance in its most classical way, I would say, with live music. That is an integral part of Indian classical dance. It's with live music. And that is something that was denied to us. So even there is this way of how to perform is also another layer of complexity that comes within this decision. Do I want to collaborate with this institution or not? Because it's a wide, like you said, it's a wide perspective on diversity and inclusion. They make it very homogenic. And on top of that, they're controlling the way you want to express your art. So by saying you can only dance on recording music, you're actually oppressing our art. So what I think is that is one of the most problematic things is as well that now this theater is known for to be the place for Indian dance and culture, because that is how they position it. It's the place for Indian dance and culture. It's not that they say it's the place with another festival like for contemporary dance and culture. No, it's the place for contemporary dance and that's it. So why do we need to go to a white institution to learn about Indian culture? Well, we're actually part of it. So that is another, let's say, very cringe way of presenting Indian dance in the Netherlands, especially for community. So for who is the art? So for who are you performing? That's another layer of, well, do we want to collaborate further with this institution or not? Because we did perform there also with the live music, but suddenly it was not possible anymore. And I do think that one of the things that is also playing a part, which we will also discuss later on, is the finances and also the people working in theaters, like how engaged can they even be with an art collective who's performing arts which did not originate in this part of the world, so who also require different techniques, for instance, with different kinds of microphones, with the live music that is played, or how do you support the dance, which is also an integral part of the music, which means you need to have, like I recently learned, compressor mics on the ground, which always need to be there, but are not always present. So I think those are already quite some layers to tap into, like, okay, if these are the conditions, will I collaborate? Yes or no? Is this actually a battleground I want to be in? Because I do think being in this part of the world, in the Netherlands, wherever you want to perform your art, either it's you set it up yourself, like the Stories of Kathak, and then check where you want to perform, not being regular program, but just your own programming, or a guest programming or co-collaborate programming. They have all kinds of names for it, just not to be regular programming, I think. You're always in a battleground, whatever you choose. And the question is either, which battleground do you want to choose? Is it the one in a festival designed for Indian dance, or is it something just on the side of the programming, which has maybe a little bit less context, you're a little bit more free in filling it in? Yeah, those are the questions that you ask. And I see a hand also from Ruby. Yeah.
Hi, I have a question. So with Corso, what you just told us, I was wondering, how did that conversation go? And then what you just explained of that this is your culture and that this is how you want to present your dance. What were their reactions on that? And I know you've worked with other theaters like Theater Dakota or Rotterdam Zuidplein. I was wondering how those conversations went and what are some green flags that you experienced, if you have any. And yeah, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I think a really good question as well. And it also taps on the point, which is one of my personal strategies, which also comes from a decolonial approach, is that what decoloniality teaches us is how to rehumanize, because we've been dehumanized for many decades and centuries. So in order to rehumanize yourself, I do think you need to see the human in the other person as well. So my approach is always first try to see the person who is working in the institution and be aware of the institution also being present in that person's body. And then you know, if they're willing to make time and to just get to know each other on a human level, you can already have a sense like, okay, am I going to have an ally? Or is this someone who is more playing by the book? What is their leverage within the institute as well? I think that is very important already to sense a little bit and discuss and just be open about it as well, because you want to perform or you're seeking for a place to perform. So they can also check in what way they can come to you. And then also see, like, you know, how open are people to learn, because sometimes that's just not the case. Or how open are people on reflecting on their own practice, because that's also not always the case. Because what you're going to do is, the moment, for me personally, what we're going to do if we're going to collaborate, we're not just going to collaborate, we're going to learn together how to eventually re-relate to this part of Earth through our arts, and how to feel ourselves more somehow homely or present here in a more nice way than always seeing the violence everywhere, because that's a given. But it coexists with what you're striving for instead of what you're fighting against. And those conversations, I help those with this approach. So first check like, hey, how are you doing? Who are you as a person? And maybe you would like to know me as well. And then let's see how we can take it forward. So the collaboration with Zuidplein went like that. The collaboration with Amare went like that. The collaboration with Corso Theater didn't go like that, because we already we performed before in Corso Theater. So our assumption was like, okay, we can do it again, and again with the live music. And suddenly it was prohibited. It's like, no, this year we cannot do that. It takes too much time, it's too much effort, too much. You cannot do this. So that came kind of a surprise. And there we were already in a process of just being programmed, while with the other institutions, the other theaters, from the beginning, we were already having the conversations. So that is also a difference.
Can I ask you a follow-up question, Anima, in relation to, you know, the example of working with a certain institution, and then all of a sudden there's a shift in you know, the decisions they make, so it's not consistent with, you know, the opportunities you had before. Do you know or feel or do you know if it's related to an individual at that moment in time who is responsible for this course? And so is that opportunity linked to the willingness of an individual professional in a certain institution? And so depending on the individual, we have those opportunities or not. So we have allies or not. Or was it a policy shift? So no matter the individual, it is the policy that you know, restricted those opportunities. I don't know if you can say something about to which extent it's you know, linked to individual or policy decisions.
Yeah. Honestly, they have not been transparent at all about that decision. So besides me asking why this sudden change, what happened, maybe we can figure something else out, how we can perform, look for alternatives. That to me is not quite clear as till today. I do know that we were the only ones with the live music. So maybe in comparison to the effort they had to put in with the other performances, they thought this is maybe out of proportion. I don't know. Regardless, I think you should facilitate the artists and how they imagine how they would bring their stories to the audience as well. I do think it is a problem often, though, that we are dependent on the goodwill of one person. And it's more a sense than a very rational explanation, but it is a sense that with the networks that we're building, it still is very personal than on a more policy level. Yeah.
All right. Thank you also for responding to that question. Can I suggest to, considering the time, see if we can engage with the second question, and I think that's also maybe organic shift, but I do see Asia's hand, so I do want to give you the opportunity, but I just wanted to give you notification of the time, Anima.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I think Asia can respond. Your mic.
You can hear me now or not?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to point me on this session. And I recognize a lot what you are sharing, Anima. Of course, because we have also 1 year experience together. For the others, good to know, I work for Amare. I don't have to deny it. It's a white institution with a lot of white people working there. And I learned a lot from you the last year, Anima, because I think I am head of program, so a curating responsibility. And I think a lot of programmers, me myself included, it's difficult to have a very wide expertise in all the disciplines from all over the world. So it needs another sort of attitude to be open. And I think it's true that many times it's on individual level. If you will encounter an open person and if you can learn together, I think I do that with you, Anima. I hope so. And but I think you also will meet programs of other people that are they are in the focus, the way they do it in their system. But I also see there is a development going on. That also the policy is changing in those institutions, and well, we all know that's going slow. But that's so you need both. It's of course you need good individuals, but you also need a policy that will take care that things are open. Yeah, so that's what I want to share for now. There's a lot to say, but yeah, I recognize a lot what you are saying, Anima, and I think the white perspective is quite dominant in what is programmed and what not, and also how it is received. I hope I pronounced myself correctly.
Yes, thank you, Geesje. Okay. Then, Fazl, can you?
Yeah, Fazil can indeed, I mean, you know, if there's people who want to respond, then
Yeah.
let's give them the floor for sure.
Hi, thank you so much for this talk. Sorry, I won't show my face today, but I actually don't so much want to respond. I have another question, but I'm going to keep it very short. And that is has particular to do with the framing of professionals, semi-professionals, and amateurs in the Netherlands, and how that corresponds to specific disciplines as well, and therefore also budgeting, right? Talking about policymakers, maybe it taps a little bit into that, but maybe you can shine a bit of light on that as well. How you're experiencing this kind of framing, or to what extent you have been able to have those kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Fazil. And I think that is one of the biggest dividers we have in this cultural sector, this division between professional and amateur. I don't know how many times I have been seen not as a professional, literally said to me, Anima, you're not professional. You're not a professional dancer. You're not a professional henna artist. You're not a professional. So they're very professional at saying that. And because they are also, you know, when institutions tell me that, I am there in my free time trying to create spaces for us to perform our arts. They are there in their paid time. So what do you actually mean with this professional? I think it's a really a strategy of keeping certain art forms out, certain peoples out, because it's related to what we think or what they think that quality is. So the higher the quality, how better your professional are. I also came across a definition that you're a professional when you're getting paid for your art. If you're not getting paid for your art, then you're not a professional. So that's another perspective on that term. I would suggest we would lose those terms though, because also with the division of funds, the big monies go to professional, what is considered professional art. And professionalism is a white professionalism. The quality standards are white quality standards or criteria. And I can give an example from my Kathak experiences, is that when I perform Kathak with the Indian, let's say with the aesthetics, with the lots of bright colors, with the ghungroos, the dance bells, with the jewelry, then it's perceived as less professional. And then in this India Dance Festival, you had this double bill where you have the traditional Indian dance, and then you have the contemporary Indian dance. And that is all in one performance. So first you see the traditional, then you see the contemporary. And that is to show how Indian dance can also modernize and become more professional. Which is very problematic, because it actually says you need to adjust your art in order to thrive here and to be regarded as a professional. So yeah, that is a bit my take on it. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Anima? And perhaps also, I think this also relates to, you know, the next theme that you wanted to address in terms of negotiations, right? And those types of conversations with institutions. But when it comes to this division between professional and amateur, you mentioned the financial aspect of it. To what extent do you think it's also related to this idea of education? That once you have completed the arts academy, you're a professional, because then you have a legitimate paper to say, yes, you have a certain quality degree. And what does this mean for artists like yourself who don't even have an academy for Kathak in the Netherlands or resources to go to an arts academy, you know, because of the migration histories that we come from. So I'm also curious to hear your take on the education in relation to, you know, refining our art form.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Well, it not having the papers, or maybe, you know, I have also certificates from India, like you participated in this workshop and in that, but even if you have like a four-year education outside the Netherlands and you're showing those papers here, they do not always mean something, because it's coming from, let's say, the South. And I know it's not only within the arts, but also with other kinds of studies. Those papers are not recognized or even valued as much as a diploma or certificate that you gain here. And that has been very difficult because exactly it also taps on whether you're considered a professional or not. And it also, yeah, I think that with the urban arts, they're, especially with, I think also with Theater Rotterdam, with Alida Dors, she also explains in her performances in the Staat van het Theater, the state of the theater, how still urban arts are still considered as amateur and not professional arts. And when it's amateur art, it's good for children so they can get acquainted with arts. And but it's not for adult audience to go to a theater and look at a beautiful performance or something like that. So even there, an art form that is quite prominent in the Netherlands is not still valued as such either. And there's no education. There was no education in that, except for the cipher. That is at least what I got from the performance of Alida. And now it's getting institutionalized into art educations. But then also the question is, that's just another wide environment in how to learn an art. So what does that to the soul of the art where it originated from? Fazl.
Sorry, yes, I'm here again. Thanks for sharing this. And as you were talking, I continued to think and actually started to make more link with the previous person who commented. Because in the policy, there needs to be some shifts, definitely. But what we actually see is that a lot of institutions, theater institutions, are very skilled in finding their way to funding. So one of the things that we see in the Netherlands is that the theater sector is very much divided by, okay, we have more community art based, the local theaters in the neighborhoods, and then you have like the more national theaters, and they are programming as well, much more kind of professional arts. And what we've been seeing in different cities, but also on a national level, is that theaters find ways, for example, such as an India Dance Festival, to get funding from different spaces, including those that are like traditionally more connected to amateur arts or community-based arts, and budget from the professional field as well. And so theaters actually have a huge power as institutions, how to frame these things and to break away as well. But we often see that it's mostly used in advantage of the theater itself, and there is very little transparency of what payment looks like across a context, across different programmings within a theater. We have to continuously figure this out, and there of course are new guidelines for this, such as the fair practice, the code for fair practice. But even the code of fair practice actually says fairly little about how to deal with these kinds of issues. So yeah, I just wanted to actually comment on that, and of course your thoughts and visions very welcome, or your reflections and also your specific practice.
Yeah. Well, this conversation is taking its journey. Let me check if I can connect your question, Fazal, to also the next story that I actually wanted to share about the preparations and the negotiations. I think I can do that. So if it's okay, I would like to share another story, which is another experience from one of the art collectives, from CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY this time. And then I will take along your reflection as well, Fazal, about the transparency and the funds and who decides upon who gets what and the skills. Okay. So preparations and negotiations from CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY. Yes, hello. My name is Anima Jagru-Ruijsen and I am a maker or an artist. I want to create a solo dance performance. Would you be interested in a co-production? Hi, Anima. It sounds very interesting. Let's plan a call and talk about it. A few months later. It was quite a ride, but yes, the funds got approved and we can start. A few months later. Hi there. As you might have noticed, I'm not dancing a solo performance anymore. Now we have 4 dancers, rituals, henna workshops, and plans for expositions. Also, it would be nice if the artist of the expositions could also get a reimbursement. Hi, Anima. That all sounds very interesting. I will connect you with my colleague who coordinates the community projects and the floor managers who will coordinate your henna workshops. The floor manager. Hi, Anima. We have new tables and chairs and a new floor. So we do not want henna to stain, so we will put plastic everywhere to protect our furniture. Nima. Well, that is not very environmental friendly, I think. And a bit of the opposite I want to create as an ambience. Well, this is how we are going to protect our furniture from the henna. What this experience shows is the many people involved from the theater side. We have coordinators on a more strategic level, but also operational level, which you have to collaborate with. For example, the floor managers. Those floor managers really have an influence on what you as an artist try to create. Where do you stand your ground and where do you choose the pragmatics? So that is the question. And those are also the dilemmas that I experienced a lot with CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY, because we were growing and growing and growing, which was very amazing and fantastic. And that is because we were connecting with each other outside the institutions. So, of course, we were also connected through our own networks that we have. And we were getting to know each other as well. And through CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY, that happened also a lot. And what we try to do is like, okay, but how can we make sure that this institute can keep facilitating the stories that we want to share and the worlds that we want to create together? And negotiating budgets is one of those. And as you could hear in the story as well, I got connected with the coordinator for community projects. So that's also the division that you were talking about, Faisal, for getting funds for community projects, but also getting funds for what is considered professional productions and arts. And just to give you an insight is that I did choose pragmatics with the henna workshop and plastic. So it was a little bit horrible though, being on a plastic table with the message of re-relating to Earth. But I had to do that because I needed to negotiate the budgets for the expositions to be held. And that was a bit more important to me at that moment. I had to prioritize. And of course, the preference is that you do not have to do that. But well, that was the situation at that time. The funds that I got approved as well were funds aimed at helping me as an artist to develop my artistic practice more. And so CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY was an amalgamation, or how do you say, it was a finance mix of different kinds of grants. So it was a national grant, local grants, and also budgets from theaters themselves. And that is how we could make it happen. And for me personally, that was a lot of search, a lot of research doing into this whole world of funds. I don't know what all is there. The theater did help me a bit with the budget for the national grant, but the local grants, they could not because they were in Rotterdam and the local grants were from The Hague. So that is also the division within grants discussions, so many layers. And what I did notice is, yeah, it is very nice to have someone who is getting paid to write the grants, search the grants, know which one fits your project, because that is a knowledge and a network that I simply did not have, especially not at that time. Another thing that was also there is that the coordinator of the co-production, she did fight her battles for us within the institute as well. So even though it was not very sure if the budgets could be there, they figured out, did some puzzling, which I don't know exactly what the puzzle was about, but they got the budgets for the expositions, for instance. She was also pressured for the theater halls to be rented out. So since there's a lot, those theater halls are a lot of the times they need to be full and they need to be rented out. They need to have performances. They need to have audiences. So when we made the agreement was also that we would have, except for one day, the whole week in the theater hall to create CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY dance performance. But then the theater also asked the person that we were collaborating with to ask us to give up one day, which for us was one day of light designing, in order for them to have, I don't know how to say it exactly, a rent out, so they could commercially rent out the theater hall. That would give more revenue for the theater. So for me, when she explained that to me, was also a realization that I did not really have before, is that those theaters also are very big machines which need to have their revenues. And that really felt like, okay, it's called a theater, but I can also consider this an enterprise. And yeah, that is something that didn't click in my mind before, but I think it is an important realization to understand also how the dynamics within such a theater also work and how decisions are made. Are there maybe some reflections, or maybe is there also someone else who would like to share their experience they had with the theater? What I also find a very unfair standard is also the focus on audience for those theaters. And I think that the grants also ask for that, is that when you're programmed, you're only successful when you have a full house. While I have been to some contemporary dance performances and things, and it was only me and 9 other people sitting there, but they were fully funded. There is no pressure there to get your audience into the house, to have that full house. So that is what I also felt a bit with CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY. It's actually a dance theater performance designed on a big stage, but to have intimate conversations. But the designs of the theaters are, if you have a big stage, then you also have a lot of audience. And for us, it was actually, we need to have a big stage, but give us just 30 chairs, that's fine. So there's also a tension there in how the buildings are designed, and how also the idea about what is performing then in those halls, in those theater halls. That's also with some kind of dominant idea that doesn't always fit like how we would like to express, especially as CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY, I would say.
Thank you also, Anima, for those reflections. I just wanted to give you a heads up that it's that we have about 15 minutes left before wrapping up this session.
Yeah. So I would like to ask, is there maybe someone who would also like to share that you really felt that you were put into a difficult decision, maybe that you had to stand your ground, or that you felt like, oh no, I need to be pragmatical right now because ...
I can say something.
Yes, hi, Sarojini.
Hello, thank you, Anima and Pravini, for hosting this. And I mean, I'm not in the theater world, so I think I would just like to reflect on the way perhaps the media reflects on, you know, how we got together with the collective to write about the response on the article, and how I desperately tried to get Groene Amsterdammer on board, for example. And that I also noticed that with Kevita's project, When We Grow Up, that I tried to do the same thing. I tried to get like NRC and a few other media on board, and that I was so surprised that nobody, absolutely nobody is responding from the cultural, you know, the cultural department. And I actually do think this has a connection to everything what you are mentioning in how people reflect or respond to a certain type of cultural performances, because I think there needs to be, if there's no reflection on this niche, right, by writers, or by journalists or any reflection for a bigger public to get to understand this niche, then it means that it's not recorded in a way, because you can't read back on the newspaper or magazines or reflections. And I feel from my point of view, having gone through this like 2 times, one with our article that we were kind of browsing that who would be interested and who would be a relevant public to read our response with the 4 people who wrote about this. How did we call this? Kind of a collective view, basically, on how the Hindustani migration was portrayed in a very a way that we really felt Anima really felt the need that we should collectively respond to this, and that it's not picked up by any sort of white media or sort of Dutch newspapers or so I feel there's a big censorship there, in my opinion. And in order to be also taken seriously with budgets and like kind of, you know, theaters, art spaces and everything, I feel there needs to be also some kind of media writing about this, you know, and not only from our own community. So I feel, of course, the strength is from your own community, I feel, because you can unite with your voice. But also I felt that, yeah, why is it not picked up? Because other things are, and certain other, it's not that there's nothing about this. And I was just, I don't know, maybe people can reflect on this, or you know, does it all depends on personal context or personal people, you know, in working somewhere, that they will write upon this. So I'm just quite confused why this was not picked up by any media, and why they are afraid to write about this, or why they're unfamiliar with writing on, for example, Hindustani queer or female, I don't know, emancipation perspectives. I'm quite confused about that, right? I think Anima knows what I'm talking about, since we tried to do the article. So I don't know if it's clear for everyone what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just surprised about like, how come it's not, there's so little written, right, about performances from Indo-Caribbeans, or, you know, you do see Surinamese artists or some writers, but yeah, not much from a different perspective, I would like to say.
Yes,
So that's my question, actually, or my response to what you're saying. And I've been questioning that for quite some time, and I still actually want to, because I really stalked the Groene Amsterdammer, because I wanted to know why the topic is not interesting for them, being a green and leftist space, so-called. I would like to know, you know, why is this topic not interesting? And I think at a certain point, like someone said, well, I think now you can just give up, because we have been having the meeting about this, but I can't tell you the reason why it's not interesting for, you know, to write about, or why. So-called, first there was the so-called idea of like an invitation for us to come there and meet them. And then the next week it's like silent. So I don't know. I thought that was quite odd in my, and I'm still thinking, like, why is there no response, or can they not give an argument why it is not interesting for them? Because I feel like also, if I can fill it in, if they give an argument, they might be afraid that they're politically incorrect, right? So I don't know. It's just very strange, in my opinion. Maybe someone else had a similar experience, I don't know. But anyway, to connect to your topic, I think for me it was just to say that if nobody's writing, right, about these performances, or if there's no space in the cultural sectors of newspapers or cultural magazines reviewing art space, then it's difficult also to sort of break through that boundary, I feel.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for your reflection, Sarojini.
Yeah.
Well, I also do feel it taps into the subject of, well, your question is, why do they not want to publish it? Does it have to do with that they have to kind of choose sides? So maybe there's this idea of being neutral and staying objective, which I think is quite prominently, quite dominantly present, especially in mass media. Which of course we all know it's not, because everything is political. So that means power is everywhere. And that's also something that is very much present within the performing arts as well, because you have this idea about art for the art. And I just want to have my individual expression. And that's not related to anything of my environment or my surroundings. But I say that's a political choice as well. So what those papers are also doing is making the political choice of not publishing a story that is also something that needs to be heard. And that is also what is my experience, especially with CTRL+ALT identities, when I say, no, we're here for not just to perform and give you a beautiful evening, because that falls under your idea of what art should be. No, we're here actually to pursue social change. Social change on many levels, not only on being present on stage as brown bodies, which is already something that we haven't seen much before, let alone supporting each other on stage, because we still have to suffer from those divide and conquer politics by the colonizers. So being very firm and outspoken about that is, I think, especially in a Dutch context, still, unfortunately, but very scary for all those white spaces that are also designed on not to discuss topics like race or and that also what Sprovini is saying about the white interpretation about diversity and inclusion. It's still from a white perspective, but what does that say about our stories that we have to share from our perspectives?
Thank you also for those reflections. I just want to mention we have 5 minutes left, and I know, Anima, you had a third and final theme you wanted to discuss. If you still want to, I do think now would be then a good time to share that if you wanted to, or if you want to continue with just these two, that's fine too. Leave it up to you. Thank you.
I think it's nice to continue to the next and final story of this evening. It's about spirituality in artistic praxis. So here we go. Hi all. I am so happy to see you. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's from an example from CTRL+ALT identity. So hi all, I'm so happy to see you again, and thank you for signing up to become part of the dance theater performance. In the next 3 months, we will dive into our bodily archives and explore in different ways what stories live within us. I will guide you in that, and from time to time, we will also invite other teachers or coaches to be with us. Together with the henna workshops we organized in the previous months, Together with the henna workshops that we organized in the previous months, we will create the narrative of our dance performance and our movements. And we will see what will emerge from that. I have no idea. I have no idea about the structure, about the music, but I know it will become something special. Each session we will have divided in a talk and a movement exploration. So, how to start? Let's decide together. Let's start with a talk. Okay, then let's talk. We started talking for more than 2 hours. The week after, we talked again for more than 2 hours. And we talked. And then we danced a bit. And we talked. Okay, if this is what we do as a group process, if this is what we need, talking instead of dancing, okay, then let's just talk. Trust the process, I'm thinking. It will give me also a bit of more time to figure out how to merge these 4 totally different bodies and develop a better sense of this process as well. How can I merge this together? Okay, let's talk. Maybe let's dance a little bit more. It will be okay. Somehow, I just know that, but it's so exciting. Okay, I know I have to do this. This is the right thing to do. Okay, breathe. I trust my body. I trust the henna. I trust us. This is just a fragment of me guiding and also trying to create a part of the dance in CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY. And for me in this moment, everything also comes together with all the negotiations that you have with the cultural institutions, that you're a community organizer. We also have to find each other, and that you do not get soaked into or even drown in those whole powerful structures of the institutions that you're working with, of the financial responsibility that you have. I did not even think about insurances. Luckily, that came afterwards when somebody told me about it, because if I had known about that, it would have been even more exciting. It's a lot of responsibility for one person to carry that. So you have to have your community, you have to be together, you have to trust us. But I still think that can be better organized a lot here, so in Netherlands and in the sector. The main message also from this is, don't drown, but trust on other knowledges that live within you, within me, within us, because I strongly believe that we carry within our bodies the ancestral knowledges that have gone before us, that are still present within us, and that we need to get in touch with them again, because they are being oppressed because of the daily lives that we're born into. So we are forced into this system. But our bodies carry the knowledges also on how to trust and thrive outside these systems while we're still literally living here. And that is also operating and dealing in a different manner, also in sense of time, because it doesn't stop. A creation process of a process that you're started together doesn't stop when you leave the studio. No, you carry it within you and you carry it further. And I think that is something very powerful, because those are still the relations that we hold within us through the art that we practice. And that is also something that can help you maybe even transform your artistic praxis from being very targeted because I was really stressed in how are we going to actually dance on stage, because we need to present something. But because of the talking, which was really a means on how to connect more to each other, we got to know each other, I feel, at least on deeper levels than only thinking of we need to dance something together. And I also think that is something eventually that we also were able to show on stage without words. So yeah, we used a lot of words because it's still a dominant form of communicating. But when we started dancing, so we talked about it and we started moving, other ways of speaking appeared, other ways of connecting appeared, also with the henna workshops. And I took those knowledges and those experiences, those senses that I had, as guidelines and as teachers. And so this beautiful planning that we made with the whole schedule and this day from this time to this time, had to let it go. And I think one of the most powerful scenes we have created through this process, which is the end of the performance, which I sincerely hope, because Ruby is also in it, one of the dancers, that we were able to dance it again. Because those spaces that we create on our own with each other are much more powerful than the negotiations whether to have plastic on the table or not. So you choose your spaces and where you really want to involve with your full being. I'm not my full being in a theater when I'm negotiating. I do feel I can be my full being and give when I'm dancing with Ruby, for instance. And what I want to say with that as well is what you can also see is how CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY grew. That is not with the help of the institutions. No, it was there before we got the funds. It was there before we were initiating. And even though we didn't know each other yet, what literally was set in the creation process of CTRL+ALT+IDENTITY, and what we sincerely feel and what became a guideline for my artistic practice as well, is we have always been connected. And that is something we should never forget.
Thank you so much, Anima, for those beautiful closing words and remarks. And I think, you know, what I at least take from everything that you've shared so far is, you know, to keep in mind the bigger picture. Indeed, what are you fighting for? To remember that we are indeed all connected, and that we need to we can negotiate those spaces because we know what we're doing it for and who we're doing it for, and that in the end we have that space together where we can, you know, do things on our own terms, and whatever planning we shared with the funds will be out the window anyway. So thank you so much for guiding us through this conversation. We do have to wrap up, so I am going to thank you, Anima, for your amazing reflections and for sharing, being so open also about the way that you have engaged in your artistic practice, and to everyone who joined the conversation today and contributed to the conversation. This was a Decolonial Learning Session from ARALES, a pan-decolonial network and organization in Amsterdam. For more interviews and or information, please visit our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. There you will find our blog page where we also share recordings from other sessions. And Reading and viewing tips will be sent by email in a handout after the session. And the tips will also be published on our blog. So if you're interested in more information and resources on decolonial praxis, artistic praxis, you can check out the handout. And if you want to stay informed about the decolonial learning sessions, you can sign up for a newsletter. Want to remind you also once again that donations are always welcome for cost of sessions and reimbursements of our speakers. And information to donate can be found in the description on our website. So thanks again to everyone who joined us and hope to see you next time.